Happy Father's Day. Today, Jackie and I would like to celebrate our fathers by talking about their lives. My father, William Thoms, and Fred Sill, Jackie's father. My father was born September 13th, 1916. He grew up in an extended German family and in a Lutheran church and school. His parents, Arthur and Emma, were both from very successful German entrepreneur families, having a haberdashery and a florist. And there was an extended family, all friends and relatives, went to the same church, went to the same school, and it was one very close extended family. My father went to a Lutheran elementary school and a Lutheran high school. He was involved in the Walther League, hiking clubs, other social clubs that were connected to the church and school. And he got as far as high school and had a big interest in music, particularly in singing. His father had been a singer, and my father then took on that interest and talent and was very interested in pursuing music.
My father, Fred Sill, was born December 13th, 1915 in Rochester, New York. He also was born into a large extended family. Everyone was of German descent. There were Sills and Mildenbergers. And his parents' families all lived in the Rochester area. There were a lot of people that got together, and many went to St. Matthew's Lutheran Church, where he and his parents went. My dad was the oldest of 5 children, and he went to public schools, and he went to public high school where he was involved in drama, and he also ended his formal education with high school.
Jackie's father was interested in drama and theater, and my father was interested in music. But what happened to both of them at the age that they might have pursued it in college was the Depression. And the Depression stopped some of those aesthetic ideas or interests because they had to find work. My father worked for U.S. Steel for 42 years. And the story is that my uncle Milton had gotten the opportunity to get a job at U.S. Steel and to apply for it and have an interview. But he decided not to go. He went and pursued college, and so he gave that application and interview to my father. And so my father went to U.S. Steel, and he got the job that my uncle Milton originally was going to go for. So my dad stayed at U.S. Steel for 42 years, and he was basically in the order entry department as a clerk. He was sometimes tapped to be a supervisor, but he didn't like it, so he moved away from that, and he spent most of his career in the order entry. Especially when it went from the Depression to the war effort, they were very busy with filling orders for the war effort. In 1970, my father moved from Chicago to Pittsburgh with U.S. Steel. And this will be interesting to see how Jackie's father also had the same trajectory. My father retired at age 60.
My father worked for 42 years also. He worked at Eastman Kodak in Rochester, New York. And he started just out of high school as a pipe fitter's apprentice. He moved up from there over the years, and by the end of his career, he was in upper level management in the new Kodak plant in Colorado. In 1970, the same year that Hollis's dad moved, my parents moved with Kodak from Rochester, New York to Colorado. That was also the month that we were married. So our homes moved when we were married. My dad, at the end of his 42 years, also retired at the age of 60.
Both of our fathers worked for parent companies that provide great benefits, pension benefits, health care benefits, vacation benefits. And so while they had very secure jobs, they were able to pursue some of their other interests. My father pursued being a musician, and he was a professional musician, a singer, and earned some of his living on the weekends singing in churches, singing in concerts. And I have here his personal copy of the Messiah. His favorite composers were Bach, Handel, Mendelssohn. He loved singing the Messiah. And also, I was able to put together from the programs that he had saved and other research places, a listing from 1940 to 1980 of 200 performances and concerts and singing engagements that he was involved with. So he was very much dedicated and devoted to his singing career. And he was an inspiration to us as children as we grew up listening to him sing. When he retired, he enjoyed doing gardening. He had a beautiful garden, the best garden on the block. He also was involved in landscaping. He loved to pull weeds, so even in retirement, he worked for a landscaping company, and they put him to work pulling weeds. He also helped my mother, who was a children's librarian. He made things that she could hang. He did some crafts with her, made some things, so he enjoyed doing that. And he also was a crossing guard. And he had one of the prime spots in Pittsburgh. He was at the corner of where the Rooney family, who were the owners of the Pittsburgh Steelers, lived. And so once in a while he would see the Rooney family. He was basically a quiet man, a nurturing man, a family man who very deeply loved his music.
So my father, in addition to his work at Kodak, in the earlier years, was an amateur actor. Many churches had drama groups and put on plays, and he acted in those. He also directed those. And at one point, I think for about a year, he was involved in radio drama on the New York State Police. And he always enjoyed going to plays, and in later years, he and my mother would go to New York every year to see Broadway shows. His other hobbies were golf and cooking. And in cooking, he always liked to wow people with the things he did, rather than just ordinary cooking. He wanted to make the best cheesecake, I loved to make an apple strudel, and fancy things like a cake in a spun sugar cage. He always liked to kind of surprise people with what he had put together. He was also very involved in civic activities. He became president of the Chamber of Commerce in Fort Collins, Colorado, was active in the Rotary, and active in setting up a golf tournament that provided money for cancer, and when he died of cancer, it was named for him. He was an ambitious person. He always wanted to learn new things, so he worked his way up in his job at Kodak over the years. And he had a desire for excellence and for learning all kinds of things. So he built his own house with his brother's help, and he wanted to know how to do all kinds of things. At one point he sewed a dress so he would know how to do that. We have a picture here of a piece of music he wrote. It's not great, but it was written for a retirement party of some people at Kodak, and he tried his hand at that as well. He was a leader not only of the civic organizations, but also at one point president of its church council, and he was the center of the extended family. He was a very generous man, and he loved to entertain, and he loved to make sure that other people were enjoying themselves. My dad lived only 1 year after he retired. He died at age 61 in 1977. And our children, other than Jason, who was 2 at that time, have never known my dad. But if you want to know what my dad was like, and you happen to know our son Jason, Jason is very much like my dad was. Has a gregarious personality, he loves cooking, he loves golf, he loves music. He is very much like my dad was.
My father lived to be 84, and so he had 25 years in retirement. And so in comparison, Jackie's father only had 1 year after retirement, my dad had 25. But both of these men were part of the greatest generation, and I think the lesson of their life would be very important for our grandchildren, because they grew up at the end of World War I, and when they got to their formative 18 or 19 years, the Depression hit. And so they were between World War I and the Depression as they were growing up, just like my grandchildren were born around 2001, 9/11, and now are confronted with the coronavirus. So while our parents, our fathers, were denied maybe their first loves, drama and music, to make a living, they continued to pursue those things as they provided for their family by working for U.S. Steel and Eastman Kodak. So here's to our fathers on Father's Day.